Gunnar Esiason, and you are listening to Breathe In, a cystic fibrosis podcast presented by the Boomer Esiason Foundation and GunnarEsiason.com. This podcast series has been made possible by Vertex, Novartis, DCU, and Atlantic Health. The views expressed on Breathe In, a cystic fibrosis podcast are that of Gunnar Esiason, Leah Ferrone, Tiffany Rich, and guests, and are not necessarily those of the Boomer Esiason Foundation. Nothing in this podcast series should be considered medical advice. Such advice can only be given by a physician who's experienced with cystic fibrosis. The Boomer Esiason Foundation, Gunnar Esiason, Leah Ferrone, Tiffany Rich, and guests cannot be held responsible for any damage which may result from using the information on this podcast without the permission of your medical doctor. You're listening to Breathe In, a cystic fibrosis podcast. All right, hey, it's Gunnar Esiason. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Breathe In. I'm joined, as always, by the lovely co-hosts, Leah Ferrone and Tiffany Rich. How are you guys?
Great. How are you?
Great.
I am fantastic. I'm really excited because we have another normal on the podcast today.
Yeah. We sure do.
Leah, I'll let you introduce the normal.
All right. So our special guest for this episode is my sister, Leeza.
Hi,
Leeza,
everyone.
say hi to everyone.
Hello, Leeza. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I am good. Thank you for joining the podcast. Really, thank you to Leah for volunteering you to join the podcast.
Yes.
You're welcome.
I was asking when I was going to come on it eventually, so.
All right, so
she wanted to.
Waiting for her podcast debut.
She likes us.
We've gotten a number of messages down in the DM about siblings with CF. Obviously, Leeza, you don't have CF. Leah does, so sort of creates that that dichotomy. I have a sister as well. She also does not have CF. So I think this will be a fun episode. I'll sort of just open up with a question, a big question that's been on my mind ever since I found out that you were joining the podcast. I really want to know how you and Leah both ended up with such similar names. That's the big,
so true.
That's the big question that I need an answer to.
Honestly, I don't even know because we've asked our parents millions of times, and apparently our dad just liked the way that the names sound, right, Leah? Have you heard anything different from them?
All right. Apparently our dad named us. My mom had nothing to do with it. She told him, you can name them. So he had full range of that. Mm-hmm. And he somehow came up with Lea and Leeza.
Oh, that's great.
And now we respond to both names or we respond to Lee.
Yeah. Okay.
Do people ever get confused? I mean, I can imagine that, you get called each other's names all the time. I mean, sometimes I get called Boomer because Gunnar and Boomer are a little similar.
Have you ever been called Sydney?
Yeah, right.
I have not been called Sydney. Luckily, those names aren't that similar.
They're not even close.
Yeah,
not even close.
No, I have not been called Sydney.
Definitely not.
All right,
the Boomer thing doesn't surprise me though. But anyways,
all right. So let's actually jump into the topic here. We talked to our significant others a few weeks ago. That was a pretty cool episode. This is just, I think, another sort of look at the support system in CF. And obviously, the relationship is much more than CF. But I sort of want to get into it here. I mean, when did you realize that you were a little different than Leah?
Yeah. Honestly, it's funny because we were talking about this before
just talking
a little bit. And honestly, I don't think I realized until maybe even, I don't know, maybe later in elementary school or middle school that I really started seeing the differences. Yeah. But I mean, Leah will tell you from a young age, I just wanted to do everything that she did. I copied
really cool.
literally everything that she did. So I thought her having CF was this cool big sister thing. And I thought that I needed to do the things too. So I remember one of the first times she had a PICC line, she used to make these IV covers.
Oh,
and,
yes. I was
socks.
very into this.
Yeah, and we would hot glue ribbon on them.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So it was a tube sock, white sock, and then we would
cut
it. Ribbon on the top and ribbon on the bottom with a big bow.
Yeah, it was very preppy, very cool at the time,
Yes.
And she would wear them around all the time once we started making them. And then I remember specifically there were a couple times that I went out and I too was wearing one, even though I didn't have
just on your arm.
So, yeah, that gives you a good idea. I knew that I was different, but I didn't want to be. I wanted to have it too.
You wanted to follow her. You looked up to her.
Yeah. But then as I got older, I realized, you know, having CF isn't really something to be envious of. And that's when I started seeing more and more of the differences and how it actually is affecting like her day-to-day life. It's not just little things that she has to do. So,
so you're 3 years younger, 3 or 4 years younger than Leah.
Yeah.
He's like a little over 3 years younger than me. We just rounded up to 4 because most of the time we're 4 years apart.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, I forget how old you are, Leah. Leah's like a grandmother.
Hey, if she's a grandmother, what am I?
You're the great grandmother of the podcast. Now, it's interesting you say that because obviously Leah's the older sister, and generally the older sibling is the one that sort of paves the way, and Leah had been paving the way with CF, you know, for that portion of life. Because Leah, you were diagnosed later. You weren't diagnosed right at birth, right? You were diagnosed a little later.
Right. So I was diagnosed at 3. And I think right before I got diagnosed, my mom found out she was pregnant with Leeza. Yeah. So it was a very, like, a lot of things changed all at once, you know?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Because that's part of, you know, since CF is genetic, a lot of parents do have to consider, you know, do they continue to have children despite, you know, an older sibling having CF. I was in a similar situation where I wasn't diagnosed until my sister was already born. And then, you know, as soon as I was diagnosed, you know, Sydney had to get tested, and, like, you know, the family had to get tested.
How many years apart are you guys?
We're like a little less than a year and a half. So
that's what I thought.
So I was diagnosed at age, so Sydney was already in existence as a human being before I was even diagnosed. So I mean, it all kind of same with you guys. Like, it all kind of just changed very rapidly, and I think that was part of it. So now, I mean, going back to early childhood, were there many differences between your day-to-day life? Because obviously you had to do treatments, Leah. Right. Yeah. You know, what did you do during that time, Leeza? Like, what was that? What was treatment time like for you?
So usually I would get to sleep a little bit later than she did. But I remember at our old house, we used to have this big, like, L-shaped couch, and Leah, like, got the long spot on the couch where you get to lay out because she was the one doing the vests and the treatments all the time. So when she wasn't home, I used to love when I would get to lay in that spot because she would always be there.
That's the best spot.
It was really good.
Yeah. A lot of the time our family would, like, especially when she was doing her evening treatments, we'd all be just, like, watching a show together. So eventually I kind of, like, I mean, the sounds of the treatments and everything is kind of like white noise to me. I can sleep through it if we have a hotel room together now. Like,
right.
So you're another one of the normals that can sleep through the treatments.
The normals.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried on the vest?
I have. We actually have pictures of it.
And what did you think of it?
I thought it was really funny. I remember me and Leah used to do the Woody Woodpecker sound while we were on it because we thought it was so funny that it made our voices, like, shaky.
Yeah.
We're gonna need a video of Leah doing this.
I know. Yeah.
I mean, I'll do a recent one. I don't think we have childhood footage of it.
Yeah, no, we'll need one. We'll need you to do one between now and the next time we record for the podcast.
Great. It'll go up on the Insta.
Yeah, that's exactly what we need. So I'm not sure if Sydney's ever tried the vest. It's kind of a weird thing. I mean, like, especially because it doesn't trigger you to cough, obviously.
No.
Right. Yeah,
so,
no.
Yeah,
it pretty much just felt like it. I was like,
it's like a massage, right?
Yeah.
That's what
It didn't really feel like anything. I kind of thought it was weird that it cost so much money because, you know, for me it doesn't do anything.
So tell it how it is.
Mom and Dad would make. This thing costs a lot. Don't break it.
Yeah. And that was back when, like, they were a big deal because they were just coming out. So it was like this huge box.
Oh yeah, the big one. Super heavy.
Dad went out and got, like, this utility thing to put it on wheels so we could roll it around the house and stuff. And it was this big thing, like, the dog doesn't get near it. I couldn't, like, you know, kick a soccer ball on it or, you know, it was like, avoid this thing at all costs. Definitely. Except for the time that I got to try it on. But
did your parents ever, like, sit you down and tell you what CF was, or did you have to kind of figure it out? Like, you know, that's something I've always wanted to do.
Was there ever
do the siblings ever get, like, the talk? You know what I'm talking about? You know,
you know how, like, a CF talk.
I don't think I did.
Yeah.
I don't think
Now
you
I
did
feel
either.
I feel like I kind of missed out on something.
Would you like us to have? We can do this moment for you right now here on the podcast. We can do this.
I think I have a pretty good understanding of it now, but I mean, yeah, I don't think I ever got one. I think probably the way I found out about it is because I got dragged along pretty much to every doctor's appointment for a while there. Which we have some pretty funny stories about that too. But yeah, so I had to listen to all of that. So like hearing words when I was little, like pseudomonas and like I don't know, just other like I can't
terms,
remember
medical terms.
Yeah, catchphrases.
But, like, but just hearing them when I was like little, I just thought that was just like common knowledge, you know.
Right.
So, and my mom, if you've ever met her, she loves to talk these things out in our house. So I would be hearing that like all the time. So I think I kind of just like learned by osmosis, kind of just by everything around me. So no official talk, but
it was just the everyday life.
Yeah.
It was. She was very present for everything I had to do other than the morning. You know?
Seeing is definitely better than, I think, being told it, right? You know, I
agree.
Now that I've asked the question about whether or not you got the CF talk, I don't really know if the CF talk is necessary because
I don't think it is.
Because the sibling is very much just going through it. You know, I think
right.
You know, you did say you got to sleep in later. My sister got to sleep in a little later too. I was always very jealous of that. But you know, I also got other perks in life too. You know, I don't know if it was the same for you two. It'd be interesting to find out. You know, I got to eat whatever I wanted to, and Sydney really didn't have that.
I think I've been eating everything that I've wanted to up until like now. Now I realize it's going to catch up with you at a certain point. Yeah, but yeah, that was definitely a funny thing because
our cousins will talk about this too.
Oh yeah, they would come over our house, and there's one cousin specifically who would always get so excited because he would love the food that we had in our pantry because Leah needed all of this fattening food to gain weight and all this salty food. So yeah, I grew up eating all of that good stuff, and it was pretty normal for us to come home from school and eat like 5 like little bags of those chips and things, and you know, Leah stayed stick thin, and then eventually I started getting a little chunky. But yeah, so she definitely got. I was very jealous for a while, knowing that she could eat whatever she wanted, especially with us being girls and being compared so much.
It's true, especially because when we were younger, we looked like twins, so we were the same exact size for a long time. You know, because I was always a little bit smaller, but I mean, you know, we did have years where we overlapped and we looked very, very similar and we were the same size. So everyone thought we were twins. And then one day it was like, oh, she shot way past me.
Yeah, I got pretty tall pretty fast. So,
you know.
I remember back to those days, and I kind of, like, we always had the after-school snack that we were always, and that was like a milkshake for us.
It was for us for a couple of years.
Yeah, like
we used to go to Burger King.
Yeah,
that was our move.
We went to Carvel.
I know.
It's kind of. I'm sure the calorie count was very similar.
Right.
Yeah. And you know, I think you know, Sydney. As far as I remember, Sydney always used to get something as well, but it was always very like. I was always encouraged to eat something, as my dad always said. You know, like I was gonna get my diet was gonna give my parents a heart attack. By the time I got older, and because of all the salt, and all the, you know, all the fattening food, it was what a lot of people, what a lot of CF families do is, you know, there's 2 meals essentially at dinner time. There's like what the CF kid's going to eat, and then there's what everyone else is going to eat. And it's kind of like a weird thing that doesn't happen, or if like you're outside of the CF family and then you're over for dinner and you see it happen in place. You know, I think my girlfriend, she like. Was blown away by the fact that, you know, when she would come over for dinner occasionally, you know, it's what I'm eating is still very different than what everyone else is eating.
Mm-hmm. Well, I also think when we were younger, there wasn't as much knowledge about like diets and stuff in terms of CF. Yeah. So I think it was a learning process for my parents. Like, okay, we're being told she needs to eat high fat food. So in their minds, that means, okay, we need to go to like get fast food. We need to just pack as much food as we can into this like tiny little human being. But at the time, they don't want to make Leeza feel different or be like, you know,
you can't eat that.
5-year-old's not going to register that. So there were a good couple of years where we were eating the same exact thing, and then it was like, oh wait, you know. So I don't know.
And even
it's
now,
tough.
Even now, I think our parents, they still make us the same dinners when we are eating together. We'll eat different portions though sometimes, or like now Leah after dinner will still eat a snack, and I'm like, okay, I gotta stop.
Do that move.
You know,
I'm like,
and obviously I have to, in order to eat the same things that she eats, I have to, you know, do an hour in the gym afterwards.
Sacrifice that for the podcast.
But for the most part, I mean, we also have an Italian father, so 90% of the time he's pushing some sort of pasta on us. So,
No, the Italian household will definitely we'll definitely keep the food coming. So let's steer away from the food. Now that you guys are older and you went through high school and college and stuff like that, what was it like for you to sort of see? Obviously Leah's health has gone up and down. What was it like for you? What's it been like for you to see your sister, very, very sick?
Yeah. So bringing that up reminds me of this one particular time that Leah probably already knows what I'm thinking of.
I feel like I do, but it's cool.
Yeah. But I never really realized that her health did go up and down. Like I said before, I thought it was just kind of a series of things that she had to do. And if she did them, she was fine. And that's kind of what my understanding was. And then there was one summer, I think I might have been coming out of like 8th grade or maybe freshman year of high school. Maybe it was later than that. I don't know.
You were a freshman, like end of freshman year.
Yeah, it was like beginning of high school. But I remember me and Leah used to have rooms right across the hall from each other. And I'm very used to hearing Leah's cough now. Like I can tell when it's a good cough. I can tell when it's a bad cough. Like,
she really can. It's really impressive.
Yeah. So most of the time I I would hear her cough in the middle of the night, but I would sleep through it. So it wasn't a big deal. But there was one night it was already pretty late. I think I had already fallen asleep, but I heard Leah start coughing, and then it got worse. And then it turned into what was definitely a bad cough. And it was one of the first times that I had ever heard that bad cough. And my parents hadn't woken up. So I ran in.
The room was kind of far away from where we were,
Right. Yeah. So, and then I ran in to check on her, and it turned out that she had been coughing up a lot of blood and had to go into the ER that night. And then she got admitted. And I think that was
one of my first major episodes of hemoptysis. So we were all learning at this point.
Yeah. So that was
not
really
a fun
scary.
thing. That is not a fun thing.
It was pretty scary. I was very lucky she actually woke up because I couldn't move from where I was.
Yeah. And I don't even know. Did I even end up seeing all of the blood? I might have blocked it out, honestly.
I think you blocked it because it was all over the bathroom. This was the time I filled up the toilet a couple of times.
Yeah, it was bad.
It was really bad. And this was by far the worst episode I've ever had. But yeah, she woke up and she went and got my parents, and from then on, she knows my coughing up blood cough. It's actually really impressive. I did it maybe a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, and her room's above mine. Okay. So she's kind of far from me now. Yeah. And she somehow heard it in the middle of the night. She rushes downstairs and she's like, "You're coughing up blood, aren't you?" And I'm like, "Yeah." It's really sad that you know that.
It scared me enough when that happened that now it's kind of ingrained in my mind. So, so I think that was the first time that I ever really realized, oh gosh, she can get actually really sick with this. Her health can really go down, because you were in the hospital for well over a week, I think, after that.
Yeah, I think that was the longest time I was ever in the hospital.
Yeah. So I think that was the first time that I realized that it was,
it could be scary.
I mean, that's very scary for a high school kid. One of the first times I coughed up blood, I think, was in high school as well, and I did it at football practice. So I did it around people who were not, who had never seen anything like that before. Yeah. So similar to you, is a very panicky moment for everyone else. I think when you have CF and you start coughing up blood, as long as if you feel like you can breathe, it's scary, obviously, but if you feel like you can breathe, you can at least deal with it.
You're breathing.
I guess. Yeah, I mean, as long as you can breathe, you can breathe.
Yeah. Right.
But for people who aren't the ones that are actually doing it, I think it's definitely a little bit of a terrifying thing.
Exactly.
Definitely.
That's for sure.
I think anything blood related gets everybody a little scared.
Yeah.
Right. And like now I feel like when that does happen, I'm very chill about it compared to how this situation had went, because I mean, it was a new thing for everyone.
You grow accustomed to it. I mean, it's a crazy thing that like coughing up blood can become normalized. It's a very strange.
It's a very weird thought. Especially when you look at social media and you see other CFers going through it, and it might be their first time or their second time, and you know the way you deal with that situation versus someone who just did it for the first time, it is very eye-opening. It's like, this isn't okay that I'm this accustomed to it, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
But at the same time, staying calm and keeping yourself in check in one of those situations is very important. Because the more you get stressed and the more you react, the worse it's going to be.
More.
Right. So.
Yeah. So, me being a only child, I don't have any siblings. I'm the spoiled little child. But I always, I've been wondering, when you're sick, Leeza, what do you do to not get Leah sick?
So basically, I'm in like full quarantine.
Okay.
So, like the way they would treat people with like the Ebola virus, you know, that's kind of me in my house when I get sick. Yeah, and now even when Leah gets sick, she does a pretty good job of quarantining herself. But that was something that was hard to like get accustomed to growing up, because, you know, when you're sick, you want your mom or you want your dad to help you. And it's like, you know, you see other people get sick and you kind of think you should be comfortable in your own home and stuff. But when you're at home, you really have to think about what you're touching and what you're eating and every little thing. So usually, I know last year I got that really bad stomach bug that was going around.
Yeah.
And I was trying my best to
That
avoid
sucks
it,
for
but-
anyone. That sucks for anyone. See it for no see it.
But I was like,
That's a bad
thing. I was like, we definitely don't need Leah getting this. So we were avoiding it at all costs. Luckily, she did not get it. So whatever I did worked. But anytime that I did have to step out of my room, I had like blue like rubber gloves on.
You really did, though.
A can of Lysol.
So funny.
And I was like washing my hands before I had to touch like anything like a doorknob or anything like that. So yeah, basically it's just being like super cautious and not touching anything in the kitchen if I don't have to. So like it's kind of nice because sometimes I get like food delivery to my room from my parents because they don't even want me coming out. But
service.
yeah. So but now that we're, you know, in our 20s and we've gotten used to it, the goal is to just not get sick. But when it does happen, we kind of know the drill.
I also think it's a little easier at this point because our living situation, like, yes, we're in the same house, but we're on totally different floors. Like, we are separate. We don't share a bathroom. You know what I mean? Like, growing up, we were right next to each other. We were on top of each other. We shared a bathroom. You know what I mean? So it was a little harder to avoid coming in contact with one another. Plus, you're little and, you know, you don't put two and two together. You're like, oh, we can still play. So... Yeah.
Now that's very reminiscent of, I think, the way I grew up with Sydney. If Sydney was sick, or really if even like one of my parents are sick or whatever, growing up the quarantine was in full effect. The same thing in college with my roommates. You know, the quarantine was in effect, and Lysol was like the godsend. I mean, that's that thing is Lysol.
I mean, she's currently in my room recording. And I just sprayed everything because I was sick last week. So I'm like, oh, God, I don't want you getting this.
Yeah. Now
I'm going to after this.
You know, was there like a power struggle in the house growing up? You know, my sister and I sort of, I guess, look back on this a few years ago as to whether or not, you know, I was the favorite child or like I had more attention or whatever. And we sort of came to the conclusion that I never really got preferential treatment. You know, I think I probably received a bit more attention. You know, obviously I had trips to the doctors that I would go with my parents, or, you know, there would be times when my parents would have to spend time with me so they could take care of me over Sydney. But, you know, was there anything like that for you two growing up?
Yeah, I would definitely say that there was. I don't know that it actually, I can't tell how much of that actually happened or if it was what I was perceiving. But I definitely had a hard time growing up with like thinking that my parents loved my sister more.
Yeah, she definitely struggled with that.
Yeah, because I remember this is
we used to talk about it.
Yeah, but I connected it immediately to her CF. Like I remember when we were little, I found like a baby book or something. Like Leah had a full baby book, but this just happened to be because she was the first child, you know.
Right.
But I saw that she had a baby book and I didn't have one, so I was like, oh my gosh, it's because she has CF, and they, you know, they wanted to like. And later, like my mom explained to me, she's like, no, once you have 2 babies, you don't have time to sit down and cut out pictures and like, you know, put little stickers all over everything. But yeah, I definitely.
So true.
Yeah, I think I had like, it was just difficult because anytime that Leah had a doctor's appointment for a while, I'd get pulled out of school too.
Yeah,
and I didn't really mind it when I was little, but then once school started progressing and it kind of meant more when you had to miss school. That got harder. So I ended up, we're lucky that we had really great grandparents. So I spent a lot of time with them. Yeah, my grandfather would pick me up from school half the time, like even into high school when I didn't have a car yet. But yeah, so I think it was just like adjusting to things. And as I got older, I understood it more. But definitely when I was little, I would see that they were always talking about doctor's appointments or like hospital visits or medicines and things like that. And I would think that would equate to them wanting to talk about what was going on with her more, but it was really just what needed to be talked about at that time. That was, you know, time sensitive.
I think that's like I think it's a pretty significant fear for a lot of parents, right? When they have multiple kids in the household and one of them has CF and the other ones don't. You know, I think a lot of parents fear that they may be giving more attention to one kid over the other, or, you know, they may be celebrating achievements for the CF kid because the CF kid is sick and may have to, you know, work harder or something. You know, I think people sort of, especially when the kids are little and they're like concerned how this may impact the family dynamic as they're older. But you know, I think, and it sounds like you guys have a similar experience the way Sydney and I did it. You know, Sydney's very self-sufficient because I think both Sydney and I we were both raised really high expectations placed upon us, and you know, Sydney saw how hard I was working at my CF. I think she felt like she had to probably work just as hard as she ended up doing, you know, in every other aspect of life as well. I think the dynamic between the siblings ended up being a positive one, you know, and there wasn't really a power struggle that existed.
Right. No, we were actually talking about that the other day, and we talk about this every so often. You know, just like the fact that she definitely had a different childhood than people that are considered normal, you know what I mean? Normals. And that is because of me. Yeah. And I do feel guilty about that at times because, you know, I don't want her life to be different because, you know, I have crappy lungs. But like at the same time, I do think that it shapes not just me into being a better person, but her into being a better person, you know? And there is a lot that CF has taught both of us. And, you know, I think that's one major positive from it. You know, she's also, you know, like looking into going into the medical field and stuff like that. And I don't think that necessarily would have happened if I didn't have CF.
Yeah.
Maybe it would have.
Yeah. It probably influenced it.
I think it influenced it.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, since I, like, as long as I can remember, I've, like, wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to do some sort of like healthcare because I saw what she was going through and, you know, sometimes maybe didn't have the best situation with a particular doctor. And a lot of doctors and medical professionals don't really see what you guys go through, and they don't see the emotional end of it. They don't know how that affects your day-to-day life. Sometimes with the treatments they're giving you. So I have always wanted to go into that knowing that I can offer that to a patient. So yeah, I definitely would not have considered that career without having Leah in my life. But I definitely think it was a positive. I think it's made us closer as siblings, even in times, I mean, you know, every set of siblings fights.
Honestly, though, when we were little, we really did not fight that much.
We really don't.
We fought more when we got older.
Yeah. We really didn't fight that much. We were pretty much attached at the hip, but
yeah, it's really true.
Yeah, and I think one of the best things that like kind of combated any type of negative feeling that would come with like, you know, what we were talking about, maybe feeling like there was less attention or a little bit of a power struggle, is I was just really involved in whenever she was going through anything with her health. So my family always just kept me really engaged. I always knew what was going on. And then later, once I was older, I was able to start raising money for it and really getting into reading about the research and kind of doing that for myself. And I think that's just helped a lot with me understanding it. And
now
growing.
What do you think about Leah having a internet friend in Tiffany?
I was really excited when Leah started. She was like a little shy about it at first, but when she started,
it was kind of weird to come out about because,
no, it really is.
I feel like when you're younger, like, going into a chat room or having a MySpace or connecting with someone online, it was like, oh my gosh, they're gonna like
Catfish.
come after you. Catfish. Actually was watching it earlier today.
It's gonna turn out that Tiffany in like 2 years doesn't actually have CF and she's catfishing everyone.
She's been catfishing me and surprise.
Love it. No, but I loved it when she told me that she started, making connections with other CFers over the internet. Because, I might understand things a lot more than a normal person or somebody who hasn't had any contact with a CF patient. But, when I say, I understand what you're going through, that can only go so deep. So I know that when Leah really has a bad day, when her lungs are hurting, it's nice for her to talk to somebody who actually knows what that pain feels like. Because, I would do anything to take that from her. But unfortunately, I can't give that level of support sometimes, which is sad. But I'm really happy that she has you guys for that to talk those things out with.
Thanks for being my friends.
Yeah.
We're really, this is just a charity case. So that's all this is.
No. Everyone felt bad for me. They saw me on the internet now. They're like, we'll be your sympathy.
Well, we're not the heroes here. Don't put that on us.
And it's good, even from the perspective of like, some of the stuff she was telling me this week, like different treatment systems that you guys have all tried out, like you can kind of like give your reviews on it and kind of give your advice on, what neb to order or that type of thing. So I don't know. It's just cool. You can meet people from all over the world that way.
Right.
Which, I wouldn't be able to do that in the same way that Leah could, unfortunately.
You're my adoptive sister, my East Coast sister.
You're the internet sister.
You're the internet sister.
All right, so we're sort of running out of time here. Before we close, I think this is an episode that I think parents will get a lot of, siblings too as well. But I think for parents who may have two little kids, whether the older kid may not have CF and the younger kid does, or a situation like your guys. What would you say, both of you, to reassure those parents about, the sibling relationship between you guys?
Who wants to start with this answer? You want me to go?
Go for it. Yeah.
Well, I think having a sister was one of the best decisions my parents ever made, even though they didn't know I had CF. So go, Mom and Dad. But I think, it was really cool, and it is a really cool relationship that you really don't have with someone else, like I am so lucky to have her as my sister, and we have been so close our entire lives. So it has been really beneficial to me to have someone there constantly supporting me. And when I would go in the hospital and I wasn't open about my CF, so none of my friends knew, it was really nice to have my sister there, supporting me, hanging out with me, kind of taking my mind off of it so that I'm not always focusing on CF. You know what I mean? And I think my parents did a really good job of normalizing CF in our lives because, Leeza didn't realize she was really that different until she was a little bit older. And, I didn't feel like singled out, and I don't think Leeza did until, we kind of made that relationship that, oh, hey, I have CF. So.
Yep. And honestly, I would agree with pretty much everything that you said. But, if, let's say, for the parents who have had a child with CF and they're thinking about, should I have another, if my parents had went with that logic, I wouldn't be here. So I'm obviously very happy that they didn't think that way and that didn't happen. But overall, I think living with her has just made me a better person in general. Whether it's with CF or anything really, it's like changed my perspective on how I see the world. And I think it's caused me to think differently about what people are going through. So, you know, Leah looks very healthy. All of you look healthy, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you are. And that goes for everybody in any type of situation. But yeah, my parents did a really good job of making us friends and making CF normal and bringing me into that world. I don't feel like my whole life has been about CF. So they did a really good job with that too. But I'm glad that I do know a lot about it. So I don't think I would have learned any of that if I hadn't had Leah as a sister. So yeah.
Well, thanks for being her sister.
Yeah.
And being that support for her.
That was a fantastic answer. Okay, well, on that note, I think it's time to end the podcast. Leeza, thank you so much for joining us today. Leah, thank you for inviting your sister to join us.
Of course.
I hope people got a lot out of this episode, and I this was a great episode. But you know, we will be back next week. The DMs are open as always. The DMs are at where, Tiffany?
At breathe_in_pod.
Yes, the DMs are open on Instagram. Make sure you hit those DMs. I hope you had a very happy Rare Disease Day. In case you forgot that you have a rare disease, today's the day you can remind yourself that you have one. And I think that's it. You can always reach out to us in other DMs, too. We have email addresses. They are saltysisters@gmail.com. I'm Gunnar's blog at Esiason.org. And then you can always hit us up on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. The DMs are open. We love talking to you guys. That's all I have to say. Do you guys have anything to add?
You covered it.
Yeah. Thanks for coming, Leeza.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right,
It was
cool.
fun.
Have a great night, everyone, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.